1st, 2025. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Mr. Borthwick?
Here.
Mr. Casey? Here. Mrs. Chesak?
Present.
Ms. Fox? Ms. Markle?
Here.
Mr. McAndrew?
Present.
Mrs. Yanni?
Present.
Mr. Holmes?
Present.
7 present, 1 absent.
I will now turn it over to the Budget and Finance Committee Chair, Mr. Borthwick.
Thank you, President Holmes. First item on the agenda involves the summary of the state budget. Mr. Laffey, would you mind?
Absolutely, thank you. In the folder that Dr. Keating handed out, there is just a brief presentation that we will walk through. Additionally, there's some copies up on the stage. We do not have a projector here, so there's some paper copies on the stage as well if anyone would like to follow along. But again, the first item on the agenda this evening is just a quick state budget summary as proposed by Governor Shapiro back in February, and some impacts on the Scranton School District. Again, we're going to focus on kind of the major initiatives here. Obviously, there's much more that goes into it, but we're going to focus on the educational side. So the approximately $51 billion proposal includes the following educational appropriations: an increase to the basic education fund for $75 million, an increase to special education for $40 million, a $526 million increase to the adequacy and equity supplements that the Scranton School District receives both of through the Ready to Learn Block Grant, $100 million for proposed safety and security grants, $125 million for proposed public school facilities improvement grants as well, very similar to what he proposed last year. So that's the total statewide proposal adds to the education appropriations. So how does it impact the Scranton School District? So it certainly increases our funding over the prior year. Looking at it from the state's fiscal year, which again is July through June, we are, as opposed to the Scranton School District's calendar year school budget, which is January through December, our basic education would increase from approximately $73.9 million to $74.9 million, or $1.1 million in BEF. Special education increase would grow from $10.2 million to $10,650,000, or approximately $434,000 increase. And our Ready to Learn block grant would grow from what it currently is right now of $17 million to the proposed total amount of $26.2, or a $9.2 million increase to the district, if what he proposed last month would be accepted. In total, that's a $10.7 million increase in state funding over where we were in 24-25. Additionally, there was some funding set aside for charter cyber reform. I believe it was around $378 million. If that was to materialize, that could generate for the Scranton School District and the amount of students that we have enrolled in outside charters, that would generate approximately, as they estimate, approximately $1.9 million of additional funding as well. So in total, that could be an impact to the district of an additional $12.6 million based off of the state's fiscal year. Any questions on what was proposed by the governor last month?
So currently, you're working on cost outs of what that would look like, and what we, ideally we get everything or more. Potentially, we're going to get less because budget negotiations are a thing. Are you looking at variable cost outs of what it might look like depending on finalization?
Yes, we are. And again, I think this is all going to become important as we move in, as we are in the spring and move through the spring as we prepare our proposed preliminary budget, which will be due in July. So before we go any further, let me just hit on how this impacts the Scranton School District's 2025 budget, which again is a calendar year. On page 3 in the middle of the page, you will see what we estimate to be the impact if this budget was to be accepted as proposed. When we develop our calendar year budget, we know one thing for certain. We know what our prior state funding is. So we knew what the 24-25 funding was for the school district. We have to make assumptions to what 25-26 may be. So this past year, our assumption for increases to BEF and special education was similar to what he proposed, the governor proposed in 24-25, which was $225 million through the BEF and $47 million through the special education funding. Unfortunately, the proposal on the table right now did fall short of that, where, as we mentioned before, there was a $75 million increase in BEF, and I think it was 40 for special education. So you'll see that the difference, the impact on our calendar year budget, we would receive less than we anticipated by about 1.7 million between basic education and special education. The good news is we didn't include any growth in Ready to Learn Block Grant. We held that flat. So that would add an additional 9.2 million to our budget, which would fall in for 2025. The net impact of that would be, we estimate to be approximately 7.5 million of additional revenues in calendar year 2025, again, if adopted as proposed back in February.
That's wonderful. And do we have, I mean, I can make assumptions, but I'd rather ask, do we regularly engage with our local delegation to make sure that they're there down in Harrisburg advocating on our behalf to make sure that we get what we're owed? I mean, this is part of the fair funding settlement. They're inching toward what we're owed, but they're still not there yet.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our local legislators, reach out to Dr. Keating often, expressing concerns for the Scranton School District and what our needs and priorities should be.
There's been real good open communication.
Good to know. And when it comes to the preliminary budget, like I said, we're going to have, obviously, there's going to be tiers just for safety's sake, if we get this, if we get that. Is it possible to include potential board priorities in that budget if we're able to get that extra, $7, $8, $9, $10 million, if there are programs maybe we can start restoring? We've looked at restoring preschool. That's obviously going to be a budget item as we grow that program. Is that something that you'd be able to include in the budget? Projections.
Yeah.
I think the biggest concern right now in any of the groups that I've talked to or working with the teachers and talking about things is the uncertainty of federal money at this point. And then it becomes yes, there was a state increase, but with the loss of federal money, where are we going to be? So it's hard in the sense of limbo that we're in right now without knowing what our allocations are. I know Pat has additional information.
It's going to segue nicely into bullet two.
Set for that, but usually we receive our federal allocations mid to late May. So we're still about 6 weeks out from seeing what those numbers are going to be.
Okay, so it's going to be a combination of wait and see, and as we discussed, you'll tier it and have projections. If we get X, we can do Y. If we get
And similar to last year, if you recall, when funding is done through a block grant, like the Ready to Learn block grant, it can only be used for specific uses, allowable uses. So we'll have to match up any additional funding in Ready to Learn with our priorities and make sure that they fall in line in those allowable uses. The good news is they have expanded those over the past few years. So and previously I believe there was like maybe 17 or 20 allowable uses in prior years. That has expanded with this new funding. So again, we were successfully able to do that last year when we saw the increase, and we anticipate having that ability for any new funding that we may receive this year. But again, we'll keep that in mind as we move forward.
As a related note, are we eligible for pre-K counts this coming year?
We are not. The window only opens up every 5 years, so we are working to try to be able to have 2 classes through legislative channels, but the actual application window is not open at this time. Ann Grebeck and Al O'Donnell will be participating in a PDE level conference on pre-K counts to be able to start working toward that. And I would like you to know from the federal level, as part of the ELPC fellowship, which I've talked about numerous times, I will be in Washington, D.C. next week, and we'll be meeting on the federal level with Senator Fetterman and Representative Bresnahan. So I will continue to advocate there that this money cannot disappear for the district.
Okay, wonderful. And you'll update us, I'm assuming.
And I will absolutely positively update everyone.
Okay. Any? No.
You mentioned Congressman Bresnahan and Congressman Fetterman, and I believe the other guy is McCormick. Could we offer, as a board, free of charge, for any one of the 3 to have a town hall meeting so that we can actually meet them and ask questions of them and have the public come and ask questions on the education budget?
I believe their offices set up town halls. I believe there was a town hall, a virtual town hall for one of them last week.
There was, yeah. Bresnahan,
Representative Bresnahan had that.
I believe so.
But I will.
All I'm saying is that we offered them our facilities free of charge for them to come and have an in-person town hall.
I will make such a suggestion next week when I'm in Washington.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Anything else to add on the state budget summary? Anybody?
No, I think it kind of segues nicely into our second bullet point on the agenda, which is the impact of potential federal cuts. Again, we've already started this discussion. Obviously, there's been a lot of other discussions going on about potentially the dismantling of the Department of Ed and what that could look like, the impact on the Scranton School District. I thought, on page 4, I thought it would be nice just to provide the board with a very, very brief overview of the federal funding sources for the school district and some of the staff and associated salary and benefits that are funded with it. Again, this is not all that's funded with federal funds, but it is from a staff salary and benefits of the largest portion.
I don't have that, whatever you're discussing or referring to.
It's in the folder that Dr. Keating had.
Oh,
yeah.
okay. I'm sorry, I thought it was one of these. You're good.
So you want to jump to page 4?
Gotcha.
So again, just going down the left-hand column, obviously, we have the 4 title grants. We also receive IDEA and access reimbursement. In total, that's $12 million of federal sources in the general fund. Looking at, again, the staff that are funded with federal dollars, again, we have over 47 staff members funded through Title I, approximately 4 classroom size reduction teachers funded through Title II, approximately 5 or 6 language guides and ELD staff supports funded with Title III, 5 employees funded through Title IV and in the form of crisis counselors, youth enrichment directors, and college career paras. Our IDEA funding of $2.4 million funds the salary and benefits of approximately 29 teachers, and our access drawdowns of approximately 1.9 is anywhere over 17 special education professional and paraprofessional support staff. So there's over 100 positions currently that are funded with some sort of federal funding. So we obviously we don't know what any impacts may become. We have heard some talk that we could potentially see possibly up to a 10% reduction in Title I and possibly the total elimination of Titles II and III. You'll see just highlighted in yellow there that is an approximately $1.4 million. Again,
has the federal government specifically stated that it's just
no,
everything
just
is?
word of mouth from various organizations of what the potential impacts.
But the bottom line is the potential impact is going to be financially devastating to the district.
Correct.
The Department of Ed did put out today a statement that the Department of Education encourages states to expand education choice by leveraging the flexibility of Title I funds. There is a letter attached from the department, and there is summary information there as well from the Department of Ed, the U.S. Department of Ed's website.
I mean, eliminating the funds or the department itself is doomsday for all the districts across the state, in my opinion. So I hope it doesn't happen. I believe we got to prepare for the worst, but again, let's hope it doesn't happen and we don't have to deal with it.
Yeah, we should also point out that the National School Lunch Program, that's $7.4 million that the federal government gives to the Scranton School District so that our kids can eat breakfast and lunch. And if there's one thing that, a lot of us are in the education field, and, we're all directors and we all care. If a kid's hungry, that's the #1 impediment to learning.
Yep.
So you think about, oh no, it's this, it's that. No, if you're hungry, you're not thinking about the math problem. You're not thinking about spelling or grammar. You're thinking about your next meal. And Scranton is blessed to be in a position where our kids, when they want to eat, they can get a meal.
Yeah,
they don't have to worry about it.
It's we're able to participate in the community eligibility program, which ensures that all students eat breakfast and lunch for free. And based off of our identified percentage, we receive 100% reimbursement at the at the free rate, through federal funds. So again, you are correct. It's in excess of approximately $7.4 million through our nutrition program as well.
Yeah, so we're nearly hitting the $20 million mark between the nutrition program and the total of title funds. And title, for the people listening, that's a lot of our special needs services. That's a lot of language support. for kids who don't speak English and are trying to learn and integrate. And those are the kinds of things that we need as a diverse district, especially an urban district. So seeing this cut would be devastating, and this would be one of those times where we just say, you got to call your local, well, you got to call your national legislators. So locally, it's Bresnahan, Senators or Fetterman and McCormick. We have to let them know.
I know I've gone over this before, but just to give that federal overview again, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, which contains the titles and was last reauthorized as the Every Student Succeeds Act, falls there. The Individuals with Disability Education Act, or IDEA, which is the law governing special education and exceptional children, that falls under the department. The National School Breakfast and Lunch Program falls into that. There is also Medicare and Medicaid reimbursements, which is actually the Department of Health and Human Services, but it is something that we need to watch because that is also additional funding that comes into the district. And then you have your civil rights as well, which fall under the Office of Civil Rights, which has been traditionally under the Department of Education as well. So those are the broad sweeping categories. There obviously is more detail to that, but those are the things that need to be most closely watched.
Thank you.
Do you have any sort of backup plan if this does happen? Like, what does that mean for the district? Like, how would we, continue to keep our doors open if all of this occurs?
Well, that we would have to look at where the governor's budget falls in, what money we receive there, and what programming can be supported through those funds. So, I mean, it's going to be a kind of a balance of what comes in at the state level if something is taken away at the federal level.
Okay, thank you.
Pat and I continue to participate in every organization's updates that we can. And I can tell you that in the senior staff text messages, anytime somebody reads something, they're dropping in links for people to share information that's being shared out from the federal level or information that could impact us from the federal level as well. So we're really trying to watch it, but and stay abreast of the latest information. But again, traditionally, the allocations for our titles come out mid to late May.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, Mr. Laffey, can we do an update on current revenue?
Yeah, we'll hit just a little bit. Again, we are very early in our year. So what you have in front of you for this period is just a 2-month snapshot of the calendar year 2025 budget versus actual, okay? So the screenshot you have here is a condensed report based off a major function. So we're not going to go into a lot of detail because, again, it is so early in the year at this time. But if you look at the 5th column from the left, you'll see the year-to-date expenses / revenues. It's broken down, again, at the major function level. So you have your instruction, your support services, your non-instruction, facility improvements, and other financing uses. In total, we've expended approximately $33.6 million in the first 2 months of this year out of our total budget of $225. That hits right around approximately 16% of our annual budget, which is consistent with how far we are into this year. Moving on down to the revenue side, again, broken out at a very high level of total local revenues, total state revenues, total federal sources, and any other financing sources. We've collected approximately $26 million, $25.88 million this year in our various revenue sources. So at this point, our expenses have exceeded our revenues by approximately $7.8 million. That's not uncommon. As of February, tax bills were just going out at this point. We will, now that the first installment period was due for March 31st, with the discount period shortly approaching, we will be most likely seeing that shift. This is the time of year where we start seeing that shift where revenues will soon outpace our expenses. We are going to talk on some investment pieces next, but this is the year, or this is the time of year when we would traditionally need a tax revenue anticipation note. So the district would normally, at the budget process, approve a TAN, or TRAN. We've not had to do that for the last few years because our fund balance has grown, our cash reserves have grown, and have allowed us to not have to go through that process and save on any interest expense related to actually doing that. Just a couple like high notes or things to watch in terms of the revenues. Again, federal and state, they're coming in just as we thought thus far. On the local side, again, real estate, we'll see that amp up in the next coming weeks when I give you my next report to include March and April. But on the payroll preparation tax, as you recall, the district eliminated or moved away from the business privilege mercantile in prior year and levied a payroll preparation tax. I'm happy to report that the collections in this period of this year compared to last year are $260,000 ahead of where they were in the same period of the prior year. So again, I think the taxpayers are educated on the tax change, and they seem to be paying probably more on time, okay? Also, our earned income tax, again, has been one of our fastest growing taxes for us, and that is currently trending approximately $150,000 ahead of where we were the same exact period last year. On the expense side of things, obviously our biggest expense is our salary and benefits. It's $148 million out of our $225. As of right now, we appear to be right on target with about $26.5 million of expense related to salary and benefits, or approximately 18% of our budgeted amount. So I'm okay with where we're at there at the moment. The one area, and you've heard me say this before at other presentations, and it's no secret for any school district in the state, is our cyber charter. In prior budgets, we were budgeting approximately 900 students to be enrolled in outside charter cyber schools. We did increase that to 1,030 this budget cycle. Currently, as of the end of February, we were sitting right at 1,022. So it's something that we're trying to keep our hands around, but those numbers just kind of seem to continue to tick up. Even if we move our budget needle, the actual kids are growing as well. So that's an area that obviously we will keep an eye on. But again, that's what we have to report. Again, for the first 2 months of the year, we're very early in it. There's at this point no red flags to report to the board.
Good to know. Anybody else? All right, next up we have a possible RFP or RFQ on banking and investment services. Pat, would you be able to speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to jump to page 5, I'm going to go all the way to the bottom. I probably should put this at top, but in prior correspondence to the board, Dr. Keating did note that we would be doing various RFPs, and this is in the banking investment services side of it was in the Tier 3 window, which I think is coming up here in the spring, all right? So we will be looking to issue that. But I wanted to talk a little bit about, where we are standing here and why we're able to look to expand our investment opportunities here. Because in the past, if you look at the top of the page, you'll see that in 2019, we were carrying a negative fund balance. And prior to that, it was an even larger negative fund balance. So we've been fortunate enough to grow that fund balance to an estimated $20 million for 2025. The board has been great with helping the administration commit some of those funds for future capital improvements. So you'll see that we have an estimated unassigned of approximately $15 million, okay? And as you move down towards the middle of the page, our goal is our own policy states that we need to maintain an unassigned fund balance between 5 and 8%. So 2024's is hovering right around 8%, 7.96. In 2025's, because the board committed an additional $2.5 million, is hovering right around 6.73%. So, I'm happy to report that some of our improved financial conditions will allow us to look to increase some of our return and maximize our investment, which is required by our own policy. So as you'll see here, policy 609 is the overlying policy that lays out our investment strategy, who's responsible for overseeing it, the appropriate vehicles that we can look to utilize. So we will be following that, to a T, and we'll work with our solicitor's office to obviously to make sure that anything we do is compliant.
So basically, your office is going to come up with some recommendations about either an RFP, RFQ, or a blend.
Yep.
And say hey, we've got these funds, they're unassigned. We can maybe turn them into a little bit more money and then see if the local banking and investment community can get involved and turn it into, something
Yep.
bigger for us.
Absolutely.
Okay. And after you just scared us with all that federal stuff, a couple extra bucks would
Yeah, yeah. I think we need to do the best we can to generate on the local end, so to offset any potential.
Yeah. Makes sense. Anybody else on that? Next up, grant services.
So just a brief update on this. I think everyone at the table here is aware of what our current model is or was, and it was a shared position with the city of Scranton. That position recently became a vacant position. So it was a city of Scranton employee, and we contracted with them we shared 50% of the cost with it and 50% of the time. Obviously, we feel that a grant writer is a valuable asset to the district, and we have some, major wins for us. So this position over the last year had helped us secure a $1 million school facilities improvement grant, which was a competitive one, against all school districts throughout the state, and we're going to use that to fund our West Scranton High School well, not completely fund, but offset to assist in funding the West Scranton High School and South fire suppression contract that you recently awarded. Additionally, this position helped us secure over $800,000 of an environmental grant, which will help offset costs related to abatement from the 2024 and also the upcoming summer of 2025 abatement. Those were both competitive grants. And again, this individual was an integral part of the PCCD grant of $450,000 that we did receive and will utilize for a district-wide exterior door upgrade. So I guess the question now is, the position is vacant. Where do we go next? What's the next step? And Dr. Keating and I were talking, it looks like we possibly have a few options. We can continue the shared service with the city of Scranton, which I felt worked fine for us, it was 50-50. I've heard some people say that maybe a full-time position for the Scranton School District would be something that they would want to consider. We can also issue an RFQ or an RFP for a contracted / 1099 style grant writer, or some hybrid model of both. So I think next steps for us, we'd love board input on this. The administration, I think, is going to meet as well and put our heads together on what model works best for us.
Well, I think
sorry. No, you're good.
one of the first questions, do we know why the grant writer left?
No, that would
do
be,
not.
yeah, that's personnel as to why somebody would leave a position.
Okay, I didn't know if there was a reason why, if it was pay or something like that, that's all.
I just think we should explore the options of hiring our own, having somebody fully dedicated. I think it'll pay for itself.
Yeah.
But if we can't do that, I do think the partnership did work. But I think if we have somebody fully dedicated, I think it'd be awesome.
I'd rather have somebody pay more attention to us.
It's a very specific skill set, too. It's very technical writing. There is a formula to it, what they look for in the grants. I was an English teacher. I'm not a grant writer. I'll give you everything I got to write the best grant that I can. But it really is a skill set, and you need to find the right person who has crafted and honed that skill set.
Okay, so you're going to look at some options and
Yep.
present them to the board?
Absolutely.
All right, wonderful. Anything else on that? And lastly, so an RFQ on cost reduction services, Pat?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, you've heard us talk in the past, and we're not only looking to increase our revenue outside of any tax increases, but we're also looking to obviously to control our costs. I mean, our budget is almost $500 million at this point. So there's been a few firms that have reached out to me offering, I think, or submitting some information on services that they can provide. And they would look at some of the current spending related to our supplies, utilities, possibly vehicle fuel, some of our communication and internet services, et cetera. So again, so far with everyone we talked to preliminarily seems very qualified, and they've got a great reference base. Possibly looking at an RFP or an RFQ for some type of services on this also as well. Some of the people that we've talked to have referenced having some clients in the school districts or municipal government, so they have that public and private sector experience. So again, this is something that we'll be exploring and hopefully bring a recommendation for the board at a future
Yeah,
meeting.
there's a multitude of services like this. I'm familiar with them just from talking to people in the business world, but also other school districts. And what they'll do, often at no cost to us,
Correct,
is just
yep.
bid out on their own, things like electric utilities or whatever, and then lock in savings. So if there's a way, obviously our utility imprint is going to be substantial.
Pretty
So if
substantial.
we can find savings, I'll take it.
Pat, when is the architect, engineer, and the construction manager bids going out on the street?
So I could take that. We got delayed. Photocopiers should be going out next. School security's on tonight. There's been a lot with the food service management and then just the legal services. So that will be issued once we're able to kind of clear some things off our plate.
I thought the architect, engineer, and construction manager was sort of a priority for most members on this board.
It's part of the tier 2, and we're still in that tier 2. So it's coming. It's just, we have to sit down and go through it, and I'm going to be very honest with you. It's kind of gotten pushed to the side with dealing with some of the other things that are going
Aaron,
on.
Christmas is coming too. We've talked about this for about 8 months.
It's been a while.
It's been a while. And I believe that under Director Borthwick, he said that our present architect engineer would only be doing projects that are presently in the works. And from what I'm seeing or hearing, it seems like every time I turn around, there's another project coming. I think we need, as far as I'm concerned, I think we need to move this to a priority.
I will make it a priority,
And
Director
I'll be
Casey.
honest with you, I sold copiers. That's not a priority. Believe me, it's not a priority.
Again, we are working through the tier 2 list as it was released, and I went over publicly at a board meeting. That is on the tier 2 list. I have every intention of having that done before we move on to the tier 3 list. So I am working through that list right now.
And Aaron, I have every intention also of going to Mass on Easter, but I may not be able to get to it, and that ain't gonna fly, and this ain't flying with me.
Clearly understood, Director Casey.
Point made.
Okay, anything else on that agenda item? Okay, then at this time, I'd like to turn it back to President Holmes.
What's next?
Motion to adjourn?
Oh, I'm sorry. So moved.
You might need a bathroom break or no? Okay, I call to order the work session for March 31st, 2025. Roll call.
Mr. Borthwick?
Here.
Mr. Casey?
Here.
Mrs. Chesak?
Present?
Ms. Fox? Present. Ms. Merkel?
Present.
Mr. McAndrew? Present. Mrs. Johnny?
Present.
Mr. Holmes?
Present.
8 present.
Okay, athletics.
We will have a discussion/motion for the spring sports equipment, repair, or new equipment.
So Mr. Gentileza put information in your packet this week. After the scoreboards were put through at one of the board meetings, information was asked to be gathered of what other sports issues there would be. That is the preliminary list of what was given back to us and shared with all of you, so you have that information. We now need to sit down, Mr. Laffey and myself, with the athletic directors and the high school principals and prioritize that list and look at what can come out of a school budget versus what would be a capital project versus what we would have to ask the board for funding for. But that is information that we're bringing forward to all of you to let you know that we are working forward on that.
That's it?
Questions?
Budget and finance.
So on the consent agenda, we'll have motions to approve the bill list and exception bill list, delinquent tax reports, treasurer's reports, repository sales, budget transfers, disposal of assets, and budgeted purchases. Then we'll have a discussion and motion on delinquent real estate taxes. Anything on that?
Absolutely. So as part of the annual budget adopted by the board in 2025, there is a line item for delinquent real estate taxes. We Historically, the district has been selling our delinquent real estate taxes to a firm, MRS, Municipal Revenue Services. They have submitted another proposal to us for approximately $4.3 million. So as this is a budgeted item and we have experience working with them, we'll be bringing forward that for the board. And all closing documents, everything will be reviewed by the solicitor prior to.
Okay. And then a discussion motion on real estate assessment approvals, if there are any.
Just the one that, just the one that we reviewed in executive this evening.
Okay. And then information on contracts update.
None to report at this time.
Okay. Thank you.
Director Merkel, Community Relations.
Yes, we'll have motion to approve donations, Fidelity Bank to Scranton High and West High for the dual enrollment program. A donation-
That's EITC dollars, so that's what that's coming through.
Thank you. A donation for Valiant Motion to Willard for transportation costs for field trip to Naog Park.
Self-explanatory.
A donation for artifacts, pictures, and memorabilia from the 1940s to Scranton High from Carol Dillard.
Again, self-explanatory, but very neat.
Will they be on display somewhere? That sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's something we hope to do.
A donation from John Connor to West High for a storage shed.
This is a small shed for softball equipment, which will be located back behind the building by the softball field.
A donation from Lackawanna Heritage Valley to John Adams for Heritage Express train ride.
Again, self-explanatory.
And a donation for kids gardening to McNichols Plaza.
Again, self-explanatory.
Thank you, Dr. Keating.
Education.
Yes, we will have a motion to approve permissions to attend meetings or conferences, motion to approve out-of-state field trips, motion to approve PLTWON Semiconductor Foundation grant.
Can I comment there for a second?
Sure.
So that grant is actually due on the 3rd of April. So we would ask, this is a grant to expand the engineering offerings in the STEM program. We would ask that any questions be asked, and President Holmes, I would ask you to take consensus that we could submit that grant by the 3rd of April, because that will be prior to the board meeting.
Is that something we can do now?
Can you?
You can take the consensus and it can be ratified at the April 4th meeting because of the deadline.
Okay, does everybody understand what we're taking consensus on?
Yep.
Okay, we'll start with Director Borthwick.
Yes.
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 Thank you. We will be submitting that grant. That was easier than I thought.
Director Holmes will receive a document to sign.
Yeah, President Holmes, you will receive a document to sign.
Okay.
We will have a motion to approve grade 9 technology education curriculums.
Again, those are the new updated ones that are coming through that Mrs. Grebeck has been working on.
Motion to approve updated list of pathway courses, title updates.
Mrs. Grebeck is really doing a lot of work to make sure the course catalog aligns and that everything is where it should be, so that is something else that's coming forward.
Okay, so we will have a motion to approve the Meadows Psychiatric Center agreement.
Out-of-district placements and care.
Motion to approve Intro to Computer Technology Part A, B curriculums.
This will be used in our intermediate schools, and this is part of the technology that's in place for places where we don't have a tech ed teacher and have had problems recruiting.
Motion to approve CTC budget.
So there is a 2.9% increase, which will cover additional staff, healthcare costs. Mr. Laffey reviewed that, and Mr. Laffey believes that it is a reasonable increase.
It's a total, for the Scranton School District share, it's a total increase of $49,414. Again, as Dr. Keating noted, it is related to some increases in their health insurance rates, consumable budgets related to supplies and inflation changes, utility increases, et cetera. I think it seems reasonable, and I feel it's in line with what we budgeted for 2025.
And what's our total contribution with that increase?
Our total contribution is $1,783,448.
Is this something that should be pulled from the consent agenda, just with the dollar figure on that?
I would.
Okay, can we pull that from the consent agenda, please?
No problem.
Thank you. Any further questions on that? Motion to approve special education settlements, if any.
There will be one.
And at the moment, we'll have a discussion slash motion for high school dress
So
code.
this is only a discussion. I know the information was put in the board packet. Last year, there was a lot of talk about the dress code, and we had made some amendments to the high school dress code. Again, this is just focused on high school. K-8 will remain as it is. But we put out through Thought Exchange, which is one of the platforms we did to be able to collect and gather information, surveys to students, staff, and community on the high school dress code. We had close to 2,000 people participate in that survey, so it gave really nice stakeholder feedback, and there is an overwhelming consensus to look at further modifications to the dress code. However, we still need to sit down with the high school principals, with our safety and security supervisor, Mr. Carney, and get input from the Scranton Police as we have in the past. So we're actively working through this process right now, and we will continue to share information out for you. What's important to note is that this is not going to be a policy change, but again will be brought forward in the approval of the handbooks. The dress code policy itself will remain as it is. However, these changes appear, if changes are so sanctioned, in the handbooks that will come before you for approval in June or July of this year. So I just wanted to give an update that we have begun that process much earlier than we did last year, so that we can truly have information, a lot of relevant information for you as a board to see where the students, the staff, and the community is standing, in addition to the input from security and law enforcement. So it's just an update.
Dr. Keating, I do have two questions for you regarding that.
Sure.
So first, do we have some sort of update as to how things are going with the dress code since we changed it this past year? And also, number two, would we still consider relaxing the dress code for K through 8?
Okay, so there was a memo in your board packet, and I can't tell you specifically when, but I will be able to re-get that. We'll get that for you. That did give you some information. It was from Mr. DeLuca about what they've seen in the buildings in relation to truancy and offenses and things like that. So I will make sure I send that to you again. K-8, the administration is really steadfast with, at that level, the dress code is still a really good thing. So we haven't explored that as we have in the high school, Director Chezik.
Okay, because I know that it came up last year when we were voting on revising the high school one, and we thought like maybe we could look at that for the upcoming school year. So I was just wondering if any
I'll work with
movement-
Mr. DeLuca to get information for you again on that as well.
Okay, that would be great, thank you.
Is there a chance that we could look into something? I often see on like the community pages and such that there's people in emergency situations and such looking for clothing for their children, and it's different per each school who has what. Is it like conversations maybe that can happen about having something centralized or whatnot? Because I know there's, like, what if one elementary school has 65 uniforms and another has 0, and then we can't help that family over there? I just maybe wondering if there would be something easier, like a one click on the webpage that said, need help with uniforms, click here.
Yeah, we can absolutely put something on the webpage like we do for questions. So that's easy to do. I'll work with Sydney to do that.
Okay.
So that's something that can be done. Most of the schools have pretty extensive uniform like closets.
Yeah, I saw someone post recently that they reached out to their child's elementary school and they said they didn't have anything. I
But-
don't know which school it was or.
Yeah, if you can get me that information, some of the other schools have a ton of clothing, so we would definitely
That's
get
why I was
people,
thinking something-
absolutely help people out, 100%, 100%.
Thank you.
Is that it?
That's it for there. There's no other questions.
Operations?
All right, first, we're going to have a motion to approve the Kelly Brothers proposal for Scranton High School interior vestibule doors at $11,030.
So I believe that the Scranton High School doors have been the project that will never cease. However, this is the last thing that would need to be done so that working with the new badge system and security overviews, the doors at Scranton High School would now be fully integrated. It was just old parts and electrics and things that are outside of my general scope of knowledge, but this would need to be done to make that fully functioning and working with our badge system.
Okay. All right, we're gonna have a discussion. Possible motion to approve the design RFP for chiller.
So the next two I'm going to loop together because there are projects, and Director Casey just made a point of new projects needing approval, which we have brought any new project forward. However, we do have the chiller that needs to be done, and we also have other projects that have popped up. And we don't know at this point if we are to go to an independent architect and put out an RFP, or are to use our owner's rep right now to get these designs done, and Pat could go over the figures for those.
Certainly, yeah. As part of the owner's rep services with CHA, they can assist in the RFP process for an architect to design a project like the chiller under their retainer. There is a flat fee associated with that. So they're to oversee, I think, you know, the insurances, the bonds, the bidding specifications. It's all contained in the agreement. I believe the flat fee is approximately $25,000 per project.
Okay,
So,
anybody?
Aaron,
so it's just, we're gonna need a direction.
are we talking about a design for the chiller at McNichols?
Yes.
I thought I said at the last meeting how that should be done. You get the name of the model, the manufacturer, and you put a bid out, and you include, and you put or equal, and you put set in place, which means to basically install it. And if we go through the RFP process, like I saw that night, that'll cost us an extra $64,000. And if I remember correct, John Freund agreed with me on it. There's no reason why we need an architect to design this chiller, because anybody who's in the business, once you give them the model number and you give them the serial number and whatever other pertinent information that you need, they'll bid on it with those specs. I mean, the chiller that's there, it's already providing what it needs to do for the building. I can't see why we're doing an architectural design for something that's very easy to rectify.
Mr. Rucker, I'm gonna openly admit in public outside my wheelhouse at this point.
How's everybody doing this evening? In regards to looking at just doing a like-for-like on the chiller, it's not just the chiller that could end up being an issue. We also have older HVAC components throughout the rest of the building that may or may not be able to support that. The chiller was installed 30 years ago, so there's a lot of different variables in that we're looking to, that we may need to design. We may not even need a chiller. Maybe we look at something more of a VRF unit type setup. Maybe we look at different options that could end up being more efficient and or cheaper. So I think that's kind of what we're looking at for an architectural side in the design, is not just a like-for-like. There's some other options that may be a better solution.
Have we looked at bringing the company in just to look at it and give us some ideal to see if it can make it compatible? I mean, that would be the first start. Bringing companies in that focus on this before we do an RFP, RFQ, and just saying, what would it take for you to do this? Just to get an ideal, to gauge what it would take.
I think that would fall more into procurement. I mean, if we're just going out and reaching, I mean,
Not reaching, just seeing if someone can come in and tell us full scope
us
what
an
this will look
assessment?
like, an assessment.
yeah, like an assessment. I mean,
Yeah,
we'd have to
like
pay for
before
an
we start
assessment more
paying.
than likely.
Rob, I disagree that we'd have to pay, because if they think there's possible business there, they'll come in and give us an opinion. I've done this for 18 to 20 years, and believe me, if they think that there's business there to get, they'll be here with bells on, and they won't charge us. And before we say, they'll come in and they'll charge us, well, maybe it might be a good idea if we let our fingers do the walking through the yellow pages and bring some people in and ask them. I mean, when I saw the fee of $64,000 for design of a chiller, somebody's selling us a bill of goods, Rob.
Understood. So I'll get some more answers for you on that one.
I mean, we have a HVAC contractor on staff, or on contract, don't we?
As a service contractor, yes.
And who are they?
Scranton Electric.
Why don't we bring them in and look at the HVA system? And
We can do
maybe we
that.
should look at their contract, because they may be able to do the work that we need done. But I can't see paying $64,000 for a design of something that we could possibly do.
I think also one thing to keep in consideration is the long-term use of the building. And if changes happen, changes occur, you're going to be looking at putting a system in that may end up that may not meet the needs of the building in the future. So
Well-
there's different things. If we go and we design similar to how West Intermediate is and put walls in, your load changes and your design and your need changes. So I think we need to have a bit more information personally to make a decision.
Well, that's your job to get us the information, and I would start first with our HVAC guy, and then I'd call a chiller company and find out what actually needs to be done. I mean, these guys, they want the business. I mean, the other guy, design fee $64,000? I don't think so, Rob. Not before we exhaust all options. Right now, we're renting the chiller. I mean, we have time to do it. We have the people on staff to go and get the information we need. And I would highly suggest that we do that.
Director Casey, in my experience, I think you're right. There's no shortage of companies that would be willing to do an assessment. What you'll typically find is they'll have you engage in an LOC, a letter of commitment, where they'll do the assessment, and if you maintain them thereafter, the assessment, folds into the project. There's no separate fee. But certainly, if you were to not go with them, then there'd be the fee. But you're right, there are enough companies out there that would do the assessment.
So, Mr. Rucker, can you get together some information and put it in a board pack for Friday?
Yes.
Potentially? Thank you.
Yeah, I will do that.
All right. So we're going to have a discussion on the Whittier parking lot / playground.
So Whittier is one of the schools that received the Valley in Motion grant. The current playground, the children need to cross an alley to get to the playground. One of the things that was requested or asked was, could the playground be put where the current parking area is, and could we pave the area across the alley and make that a parking area? Obviously, the playground has no cost. That's a grant through Valley in Motion. However, to move the parking lot would cost in the neighborhood approximately $500,000. So we would need to make a decision of if we wanted to look at no longer having to cross an alley and having the parking over there, or do we want to go with the grant as it is and keep it in the area where the playground exists currently? But we're bringing that forward to you as it has been requested. Questions?
Do we have a recommendation, or we're waiting on that?
I don't have a formal recommendation for you right now. It's just information we're bringing forward. I will give you, I'll dig more and I'll get you a formal recommendation.
Yeah, I just think with, talking to our safety director, talking to,
Yeah, I haven't had those conversations. This was just the initial, this is what it would cost.
got it.
And why we are getting that information.
Okay.
Dr. Keating, what are the students doing now, to get over to that play area? Are they, do we
There's
have someone
staff there to assist them.
Okay.
So it's an alley, so it's presumably not heavily trafficked, right?
Correct,
I
it's an
be-
alley.
I believe they might block off the alleyway.
I think they
Yeah,
do.
different
call it
kinds of
things.
I believe they do.
Yeah.
But
Aaron,
still,
is
I mean,
the
you
No, I
alley-
agree. I'm
you
just
may
saying.
get a rogue person that just goes flying down there.
Yeah, it's definitely.
Is the alley a high-traffic area?
It's not that it's a high traffic area, but it is drivable. People use it.
Would it be a major inconvenience for the people who use it? I know that somewhat of the area, if we just asked for the city to condemn it.
The city would need to make that decision. I will tell you that in my time back here, the area where I get the most neighborhood complaints about traffic and buildings is Whittier.
Agree.
I would say significantly, I've talked to neighbors in that area.
Same.
Again,
And what are the complaints?
About the traffic jams, people parking on people's property, people blocking people's driveway, the noise, deliveries that occur in the middle of the night that are loud. There's a lot.
Yeah, one,
There's
too,
been
is
multiple people that I've met with in those neighborhoods.
the drop-off, too, with the buses
I
coming.
could understand that.
It's tough. Anybody else? Okay.
Good.
Motion to approve award painting contract for West Intermediate.
It is my recommendation that we award that contract.
Okay. Any questions? All right. We have a discussion, possible motion to approve change orders for costs associated with work to remove the acoustical lay in the ceilings and provide an open ceiling. There's the four change orders listed below. There's GCCO 005, MCCO 003, ECCO 007, PCCO 004, and the total for all four of them is $80,133.81.
So this has been brought up at multiple board meetings, work sessions. The ceiling in the gym in West Scranton Intermediate School is a drop ceiling. It isn't the most conducive ceiling to an athletic facility. The current scope of work speaks to replacing a drop ceiling. We would like not to have a drop ceiling and have a more open industrial space where we didn't have to worry about the ceiling tiles and those different things in the gym area. Initially, we thought this was going to be extremely expensive, $200,000 or more. However, it came in at a much lower number. If we're going to redo that gym, it is my recommendation that you accept this change order and that you do not put another drop ceiling in the gym area.
Any questions? All right, and then finally, discussion, possible motion for lighting at Scranton High School softball field.
So our lighting is not working at the Scranton High School softball field at all. Water had gotten into the area where the electric stuff, I'm trying to come up with a better word, is.
Rob's coming.
And until it unfroze, we had a pretty cold winter, we couldn't really get down there, but the lights are shot. They do not work at all anymore. Mr. Coyle, the building principal, is coordinating to meet the needs of the softball players. However, we are looking to put out to bid to replace the lighting at the softball field.
If it's water damage, do we explore possible insurance claims, Pat?
Pat, would that be an insurance
I
claim?
believe we did submit it to insurance already.
Oh, okay, great.
Mr. Rucker?
How's that going? Do they respond?
Well, it's been submitted to the carrier, but,
So we just have to,
yeah, we'll follow back up.
like, about a month?
Yeah. No, it's not that long.
Oh, okay, great.
This is relatively new development. It's only, I don't know, a week? When did
Oh,
we-
okay. I
About
didn't
a week and a
realize
half,
that.
yeah.
Week and a half?
Week and a half, 2 weeks, yeah.
Okay, great.
So what ended up occurring, about a month and a half, 2 months ago, we had an issue where a breaker tripped, took the power down for the entire building. Come to find out, it was the 300 amp breaker servicing the softball field and the soccer field across the street. We weren't able to get that to come back online, so we locked out, tagged out the 300 amp breaker, went out to inspect the vaults, found that they were frozen. So we had to wait until the thaw occurred for us to get in there, pump the water out, get in, and discovered that multiple of the 500 MCM lines had bubbled and were causing dead shorts, which was taking down the electrical. So there's about 900 feet of that estimated. So we're looking at getting a contractor to come and do it. Just the material on the wiring itself is about $40,000 in just material. So that's kind of where we are at the moment.
And just, I don't know if you remember, it was over a weekend, I texted you guys that the lights had gone out in Scranton High School. This was also the thing that tripped that to happen.
Yes.
Pat, as long as we're talking about lighting in that area, where do we stand at getting lighting on the street?
Providence Road? The last Director Casey, that's a great question, and it kind of goes back to what our grant discussion we had just a few moments ago. We were working, that was going to be part of and I'm going to mess up the name, but I believe it was a PennDOT grant that the city of Scranton was working on. I don't believe that grant window is currently open at this time, but I think they are prepared to submit for it when it is. But I will follow up with my contacts there at the city and get a report back.
Here's what my concern is. I actually believe that it's a safety issue for people walking around after games or on inclement weather. I actually believe something needs to be done in a hurry before somebody gets hurt.
So there is, I know that in that grant, they were looking specifically at olive street, sidewalks, things like that. So that is something where we do need to petition the city on that lighting, because that's not ours, that's theirs. So it's something we would have to reach out to there for additional lighting in that area.
Well, have we done that?
I have not.
Yes.
Mr. Ricardo was working on it.
We did, and actually,
Yeah.
that's technically not even a city road, that's a state road.
Right.
So that was part of what Mr. Laffey's saying. That was part of the grant we were working on.
I think I found it online. It's called the PennDOT has what's called a multimodal transportation fund, and I believe they were looking at applying for a grant out of that specific funding source. I will get an update for this week's board packet. Again, it's on their radar. I don't think the grant window is open at this time, but you'll get a full report this weekend.
You know, maybe we could talk to Senator Flynn and have him help us with it. Because, guys, I am petrified every time I drive that street at night. It is pitch black. And somebody's going, matter of fact, it's actually, in the wintertime, a safety issue for people who are in the school. You don't know who's down there.
Personnel?
Okay, so under the personnel report, we'll have a motion to approve the personnel report, motion to approve election of board secretary, motion to approve the MOU with SEIU Local 32BJ, and a discussion about pay scales.
So the personnel report is standard. The election of the board secretary is something that must occur every other year. So that is an official appointment every 4 years, every 4 years, so that is an official appointment, and then must be submitted and signed by the board president. The MOU with SEIU has been reviewed with the board, as has pay scales.
Okay, that's it. Policy?
Director Holmes, before we move off personnel, and I mentioned this in the back room, could we just have a resolution for the IT guys for the extra time that they worked to change that from $25 to $45 an hour?
Remember, I know Dr. Keating said they were going to work on that and submit something in the packet, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
All I'm asking for is a resolution, either vote it up or vote it down.
You can't vote it up or vote it down right now. She's got to gather information.
No,
That's
I'm
what they
saying
explained to us.
Next week, have a
Bob,
resolution.
we explained in executive session, they still have to run all the numbers. When they get all the information and share with us, we can look at adding it, let them do their job.
Fine.
Policy?
A motion to accept the resignation of Director Gilmartin. A motion to approve second read updates revisions 006 meetings. A motion to approve second read updates revisions of 209 health examinations and screenings. A motion to approve first read updates and revisions 103 discrimination harassment affecting students. A motion to approve first read updates revisions 104 discrimination harassment affecting staff. Motion to approve first reads updates revisions 234 pregnant parenting married students. And a motion to approve first read updates revisions 817 responsible contractor.
So those are all as written.
Thank you.
Vendor relations?
Okay, the first one is to approve mom and pop contracts, if any. The next is to update list of transportation drivers, if any. The next one is the award of FSMC RFP contract.
Can we need to comment on that. That's the food service management contract. And to get that together, we are going to be requesting a special meeting and postponing that for Monday. Mr. Laffey, I don't know if there's
Certainly.
anything you want to add.
No, absolutely, certainly. So as you're aware, we are out to invitation for proposals for the food service management. We recently conducted a walkthrough with interested food service management companies, approximately 7 or 8 of them within the past week and a half through the district facilities. The proposals are due to the district on April 2nd. We do have a committee established of central administration, building administration, nurses, clerical, and support staff to evaluate the proposals based off of a scorecard that the Bureau of Food and Nutrition requires you to follow. Due to the fact that the proposals are due on the 2nd and the lengthy review process that will take place, we will request a special meeting. Now, the reason we're going to request a special meeting in the middle of April is because in order to not have any effect on our summer food service program, the Bureau of Food and Nutrition not only wants the contract awarded, but it needs to be signed and submitted without error into the Bureau of Food and Nutrition. So we'd like to give ourselves a little bit more leeway to make sure that that's possible.
There's no corrections that have to be made.
Correct.
Okay, the next one is the award of school security contract.
So that was one of the Tier 2 MOUs that was released. Mr. Carney is working through the scoring process now, and we will be bringing forward a recommended candidate for our school security force for you on Monday. It will be in the board packet.
Okay, the next one is the appointment of special education legal counsel. The next one is the appointment of general legal counsel.
We have in discussion on that. It says discussion and motion. Did you have anything, Dr. Keating?
Pardon me?
I don't have
Okay.
anything.
Can I just say, before we begin, without Attorney Katz present, who was helping us with the appointment of legal counsel, how would you recommend we go about any questions that we may have?
I will have Attorney Katz here on Monday. Unfortunately, he had a conflict tonight, so he couldn't be here, so he will be here next week for the vote, for both executive session if there's questions, and for the meeting.
May we speak to it at this time?
I don't see why not.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I just know,
public comment.
I just know that Attorney Werter can't speak to it.
Right.
Conflict of
right.
interest.
Okay.
I understand in the meantime, this has now been put into the negotiation process by, I think you sent out a text or an email, Ty,
I did forward the email.
forwarding it, instructing the administration to start negotiations with Joyce, Moran, and Carmody
Correct.
for both contracts?
Correct.
Okay. Next one
Hold
is
on.
the...
There's
Hold on,
comment,
there's
Director
comment.
Casey.
Pardon me?
There's comment.
There's another,
So we may comment?
yes.
Okay, okay. So I'll start. During our consensus discussion, I shared with my colleagues how important a decision I think the selection of a law firm is to represent not only the board, our administration, but our students. So in my opinion, we need to appoint the most cost-effective firm with the most experience in public education law. And that's for our students, our staff, and our taxpayers. So with that being said, I just want to make the point, and I think most of you know this, that I take all of my votes under very careful consideration. I do my homework, I do my research. And I do that because in 2023, my community supported me for re-election when negative mailers went out about me. So I always keep that in the back of my mind when I make decisions. So I'll always do my due diligence for my community. I look through the proposals, and it's my understanding from Attorney Katz that we can talk about the pieces of the proposal. So the firm that the majority of the board has decided to go with is $240 an hour for partners, versus $200 an hour for the firm not selected.
That's not true. It's a negotiation. Negotiations haven't been complete. Let's not deceive the public.
May I finish speaking and then
You
you
may,
can
I
say-
just want to make sure the public understands.
Sure. What I said was, in looking at the proposal submitted, on the initial proposal submitted, I don't know if they're a matter of public record. Will they be a matter of public record, Dr. Keating?
I believe they're a matter, any RFP is a matter of public record after they're closed, correct?
Okay, so then it is a matter of public record for the public to see that in the original proposal submitted, that my colleagues have chosen to move forward with as a majority vote, it's $240 an hour that was submitted, and $200 an hour for the firm not selected. The firm not selected is an education law practice group currently serving 32 districts. I think they have the most experience if you compare the proposals. So for that reason, I am not in favor of the firm desired by the majority of this board. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Anyone else?
Sure.
EV buses?
I said sure.
Ms.
Thank you.
Director Fox.
Okay. Good evening. For the official record, I, Director Catherine Fox, will be taking a moment to discuss the motion to approve appointment of general legal counsel. There's just a few moments that I would like to take at this time. I will start with, per a Scranton Times Tribune article, in July of 2023, an attorney from the firm presented in front of us sent a letter to the school board opposing us to take action on any significant contracts, including contracts relating to the district's execution of government functions such as legal services, administration, and other functions under school code, particularly if those contracts need not to be renewed or reconsidered until after the successor board assumes office.
Excuse me,
And-
Director Fox, may I interrupt you? There's a light shining in my face, I think by Mr. Moran. It's very hard for me to see. That's fine, it's very hard for me to see. It is being taped, so everything will be on record, and it's on YouTube for you, sir. I'm sorry, that light was just hitting me right in the face. Go ahead, Catherine.
Until after the successor board assumes office and will bind the successor board for a longer period of time. So just to clarify, this was a letter that was sent to us on behalf of two currently seated board members who were potential, well, at that time, I think, secure nominations through the primary, telling us that we could not vote on the superintendent at that time because they would be seated members soon. I would just like to clarify that we are in very, very similar situations at this time because our current law firm, the contract does not run up until December of 2025 when we will have a new board makeup. And it is a guarantee that at that time that at least 3, if not 4 members will not be present. So I do have a couple points to make, but this one I would like to understand the clarification on how we were threatened to be sued if we voted on the superintendent. And in this letter, it was specifically addressed also something like such as legal services. And now we are pushing a vote to go through very soon rather than even running out the contract for the legal services that we have. Another point I would like to make, I guess, off of what Director Yanni stated was, as Director Borthwick said, negotiations will now take place, so I believe I'll have more to say on this come next Monday's meeting. But up front, it was made clear to us that there's different methods of retainer for the different firms, so I would request that we really push on having a similar retainer method, being as it was explained to us that we saved over $220,000 by having a work-based retainer rather than an hourly-based retainer. And that is a lot of taxpayer money that I don't want to see gone. Yes, it is a little intimidating knowing that you're being recorded and such, because as was stated to us recently, we have a First Amendment right.
We do have a
So
First Amendment
to
right
feel
to
like
speak,
I
we
can't speak
absolutely
openly
do.
and freely
Yes.
is unfortunate. So I've had multiple members of the public reach out to me with concern. I also had colleagues reach out to me with concern. So I have 2 requests, which I'm sure will go unheard. The first is I had a colleague reach out to me and say that they were not sure how to feel because the opposing firm wasn't from Scranton. So if your concern is that the opposing firm isn't from Scranton, I believe we should deny both bids and put it back out with the requirement of Scranton to be fair and transparent, that Scranton is a requirement for seated board members. That was not listed on the RFP, and if that is going to be a deciding factor, we need to be fair and transparent in that. If that's not for a majority of you and such, then that's fine, but I think it's something we should at least discuss, that if that's really going to be our main factor is Scranton, we should be clear on that. And then there have been discussions of possible potential conflicts of interest that we've discussed up to this point. We've been advised that some of them cannot be discussed publicly, which I will not, but there have been various others, such as members of the firm and other roles that they hold within the community. So I'm requesting that we seek an attorney that specializes in ethics or submit for an advisory opinion through the PA Ethics Commission. I believe that this will make sure that we do our due diligence. As I've said, I've been addressed by multiple community members asking questions that I cannot address, nor can we, because we are not ethics attorneys. So for me to do my due diligence as an elected official, I'm requesting, again, that we either seek an attorney that specializes in ethics or submit for an advisory opinion through the PA Ethics Commission, because there's too many, there's a host of concerns that have been raised, and they cannot be answered by just us or just the people at the table. They have to be raised by somebody they have to be answered by somebody with higher knowledge than we hold. And as a seated director, that is my request at this time.
Are you done?
Yes.
Thank you. On the EV buses?
Is there any other comments? Sorry, Director Casey, I just wanted to make sure.
Okay. Discussion on EV buses credit?
So I know that this was in your packet as well. All of the buses are running, and we will begin receiving the reimbursement for them running. We will continue to give you updates on any issues or problems
And just to clarify, that's $10,000 a month while we're in school, correct?
while in session.
Yes.
That's it.
Anything else? Do you have anything, Dr. Keating?
No,
There's
well, the
one more
federal
item.
update we went over during
Yes,
the
exactly.
budget and finance.
There you go. All right, with that said, motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.